So did the discussion push some buttons? Yeah? To really look at our speech. Yeah, that can be a hard one because sometimes it just comes out and we're not really thinking about the results of it for others or for ourselves. Yeah? And especially when we look at the one about lying and being deceptive and how sneaky our ignorance, anger, and attachment are in justifying, kind of nasty speech. Do you agree? Or, yeah? Okay. So today, or this session, I should say, will finish up ethical conduct, even though we never really finish it up until we attain Buddhahood. But we need to get on to fortitude, which we'll do tomorrow. And that's a fun one because there we really have to look at our anger and, and the mind that acts with anger. Lovely topic. Okay, so let's just sit quietly for a couple of minutes, let the mind settle, and then take a moment and generate your bodhicitta motivation for listening to the teachings. So this time, rather than me lead you through a motivation, it's good if you practice motivating yourself. Very nice, you're behaving, computer. Okay, so just to finish up some of the benefits of ethical conduct. So His Holiness says, abandoning destructive actions brings coolness to the mind as the fire of guilt and remorse has been reduced. That's true, yeah, because the more we can abandon harmful actions, the less guilt, less remorse we have. Practicing the 10 virtuous pathways of actions brings delight and peace to the mind. Again, when we act with very clear values and with ethical conduct, our mind is peaceful because we know there's no reason for anybody to blame or criticize us or say that we're a hypocrite or something like that. That doesn't mean that everybody will always like what we do, yeah, but they hopefully will trust that what we do was carrying out a good intention, a good motivation that we had. Okay, so then the mind's at ease. You're not doing something and then waiting for a bunch of people to criticize you and write things about you and so on and so forth. It is said that a special fragrance called the scent of pure ethical conduct naturally surrounds people who have pure ethical conduct. Yeah, so they say that a lot. And when we offer incense, the incense represents pure ethical conduct, the fragrance of acting, acting ethically. So ethical conduct is like a dike. It holds us back for involvement in harmful actions. That's really true. And that's why we take precepts. Yeah. How many of you have the 5 lay precepts? Oh, good. A number of you do. Yeah. So those precepts, we take them because we're not perfect beings. If we were perfect beings and would never do those 5 actions, we would not need to take precepts, yeah? But we take them because we have thought about our ethical conduct, seen what harmful behavior has created in our relationships with other people and our feeling about ourselves. And we say, okay, I've been there, done that. I'm not going to do it again. Yeah. And then when we take the precept, we're saying that publicly, visualizing the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And that gives us a lot of strength to not do what we've decided we don't want to do, even when a situation tempts us to do it. Okay? Because we're always meeting difficult situations. I was talking about this morning, just things, to please a friend and, kind of lie to cover them up, or, have a fling with the excuse that it'll bring more good results to your marriage. People think of all sorts of crazy reasons to do things. But when we keep ethical conduct, we've already decided, okay, there's certain things I'm not going to do. Yeah. And then the precepts help us to do that. So people often ask us, monastics, why did you become a monastic? Kind of like, who would ever want to do that? Well, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but that was one of the reasons that I decided to ordain, was I needed to really make my ethical conduct very clear, and to make some promises about how I would act and how I wouldn't act. And I found that that's been extremely helpful in my life. Yeah. In fact, when I think of what my life would be if I had not met my teachers and had not ordained, it's not a pretty scene. I would have made a big mess, I think. Okay. So ethical conduct is like a dike. It is like a lamp that illuminates dark corners of our mind so that we can clean them. Yeah, when we hear about ethical, have to listen to teachings like this, or the discussion you just had, then we start to really look at aspects of ourselves that we are often, we just ignore, we're not in touch with, and as a result, we just keep doing the same stupid things again and again. Yeah. Do you ever do that? Yeah. You do something stupid and you say, that was stupid, I'm not going to do it again. And then you do it again, this time expecting a different result, because you have a good justification this time. Yeah. And you get the same result as before. And you go, really, I've got to stop, So, yeah, it's very helpful to have these kind of precepts. Okay, so when we talk about ethical conduct, we are talking about three kinds of ethical conduct in the Bodhisattva practice, which is what we're doing. So the first kind of ethical conduct is to abandon negative actions, which is what we've been talking about so far. The second aspect is to create virtuous aspects. And then the third kind of ethical conduct is to benefit sentient beings. So we'll get into those three in a minute. Okay, I just want to talk a little bit more about the benefits of ethical conduct. Yeah, because the Buddha always talks about the benefits of something. He's a very good salesman. Except you're not going to win any special prizes, and nothing's going to be free. Yeah, you have to put in some effort. Okay, So, His Holiness continues, practicing ethical conduct is extremely important for ordinary beings as well as the Aryas, people who have realized emptiness directly. We may create a lot of good karma by practicing generosity, but if we don't also practice ethics, because ethical conduct is the cause of a good rebirth. If we don't practice that, but we do practice generosity, then you will wind up like Bibi, the dog here. You know Bibi? I'm not talking about Netanyahu, not that Bibi. Okay, I'm talking about Bibi the dog, that lives here. Okay, I met Bibi the other day. And we have 4 cats at the Abbey. So, these animals like Bibi, adorable puppy, dog, pampered to death, just like we pamper our kitties. Yeah, right? Yeah. And, okay, has a dog rebirth, which is an unfortunate rebirth because of not keeping good ethical conduct, but lives in, an extravagant life that even some human beings don't have. Yeah. And that's because of practicing generosity. So it's important to practice not only generosity, but also ethical conduct. On the other hand, people may practice ethical conduct, but not generosity, in which case you will have a fortunate rebirth, but you'll be poor. Yeah. So you'll have a human rebirth, but you'll be born in poverty because of the lack of generosity. So the idea is that, at the end of the day, we want to practice as many of the Buddha's teachings as we can do, and to do that as much as we can. To create the causes for all good opportunities. Okay. Yeah, and because the thing about being born in an unfortunate realm, even though you have a good life. I mean, Bibi's spoiled, our 4 kitties are spoiled. But we try and teach them good ethical conduct. Like don't chase gophers and moles and mice. They want to live as much as you want to live. Don't kill them. Yeah, this is the basic conduct. Don't harm other living beings. And our precious little kitties just go like, who, me? Do that? Of course. Yeah. So, because people often say, well, what's wrong being born as an animal? There's nothing wrong with it, in terms of right or wrong. It's just your ability to practice a spiritual path is severely limited. Yeah, and that's not a good situation. Okay. So, yeah, and also if you're born in a lower realm, it's very difficult to get out because you're not creating more good karma. Yeah, you have to wait until maybe some virtuous karma that hasn't ripened yet, that you created in a previous human rebirth, ripens at the end of your life as an animal, and that karma will throw you into a good rebirth. But, in terms of creating virtuous karma, when you're an animal, very difficult. Yeah. Okay. So, Okay, so we'll go on to, so that's about the ethical conduct of abandoning non-virtue. Okay, so the next one is the ethical conduct of gathering virtue or creating virtue. Okay, by the way, before we go on to the one about gathering virtue, we all, I don't know about you, maybe I shouldn't talk about we all, but if you're anything like me, you've done a pile of negative karma. Those imprints are on our mind stream. And so therefore, it's very important to do purification practice. And the Buddha taught purification practice. It's called the four opponent powers. So first, having regret, not guilt. Guilt is not a virtuous attitude. Regret is, okay? So to have guilt, then to change our attitude towards whoever it was that we harmed. So if we harmed holy beings, to take refuge in them, to restore the relationship. If we harmed sentient beings, to generate bodhicitta, to transform our relationship with them. Okay, then the third one is to do some kind of purification practice, some kind of virtuous action. So here we have doing the practice of prostrating to the 35 Buddhas, the Vajrasattva practice, many of these other practices that we do. It could also involve offering service, in a Buddhist organization, doing some volunteer work, or in some kind of charity organization, doing volunteer work. That could be the remedial action. And then the fourth of the four opponent powers is to make some kind of determination to do our best not to repeat that action. Yeah, and that one's very important, because if we do the first three, but then we don't have any determination not to do the action again, well, we're very much creatures of habit, and we will wind up doing that thing again. Yes, which we don't want to do. It just creates more of a mess in our lives. Okay, now ethical conduct of gathering virtue. Okay, so refraining from non-virtue is virtuous in itself. Yeah, so what constitutes a virtuous action? For example, you abandon killing, you abandon harsh speech. Yeah, so you just, you're about ready to scream at somebody or slam the door or call them names, and you take out your duct tape. Yeah, duct tape is very useful. Yeah, and you keep your mouth shut. Yeah. Have you ever been in the position of listening to yourself say something and at the same time saying to yourself, shut up. I shouldn't be saying this, but you keep on saying it. Yeah, I've had that situation. Yeah, so, just abandoning the action, stopping it, is a virtuous action. Then doing the opposite is, a virtuous action. So instead of killing, protecting life, instead of taking what hasn't been given, protecting others' property, instead of unkind and unwise sexual relationships, being faithful and kind, instead of lying, being truthful, instead of divisive words, speaking in a way that brings people together and creates harmony. Instead of harsh words, praising people, giving them good feedback. Instead of gossip, talking about things that are meaningful. Yeah. Instead of coveting others' possessions, being generous. Instead of malice, healing wounds and kindness, and instead of wrong views, creating right views, learning and thinking about the Dharma, and gradually changing our views. So those itself are virtuous actions. Okay, then taking precepts is another virtuous action that is really quite special. Yeah, because every moment that you are keeping a precept that you've taken, you are creating virtue. Okay, so in this room, there are people who have taken the precept to abandon killing, and there are people, let's say, who have not taken that precept to abandon killing. The people who have taken the precept, you're sitting here, and I'm assuming that every single moment you're here, you're not killing. Yeah, so you're not squishing any bugs or, things like that. So you're just sitting here doing something else, but you're keeping the precept of not killing. So every moment you are creating the virtuous action of abandoning killing. Another person sitting here who does not have the precepts also is not killing, but they're not creating the virtue of abandoning killing. Yeah. So when you have a precept, every moment that you're keeping it, even when you're sleeping, walking down the street, whatever, as long as you're keeping that precept, there's a continual creation of virtue. So there's a lot of advantages to taking and keeping precepts. Yeah. And it's interesting. After some time of keeping precepts, I don't know how other people felt, but I know when I started Dharma practice, I felt like there was just kind of nothing sustaining me. I was just floating somehow. But when you keep precepts and abandon some of those things that you used to do that you didn't want to do, but you did anyway, then you begin to feel that there's something virtuous holding you up. Yeah, you're being somehow sustained through your good actions. It's a strange feeling. I can't really put it in words, but it happens. Yeah, for people who don't want to take precepts for their whole life, there's also the practice of taking 8 precepts for 24 hours. And then that's good because you keep those 8, for the whole 24 hours and accumulate that virtue. Okay. So we should also take care not to destroy the virtue we've already created. This is important because just as we can purify the seeds of non-virtue in our mind stream, yeah, we can also, impede the seeds of virtue from ripening in our mind stream. Okay, so for example, getting angry is said to destroy a lot of virtue. Yeah, so we may have worked very hard creating virtuous actions, being kind, being generous, abandoning negativities, yeah, and so on. But we get angry and we just explode, and that kind of, it can wipe out the virtue we created, or what it does is it delays when it will ripen, or when it ripens, it won't be such a strong result, things like that. So we really want to avoid losing our temper because there's a lot of disadvantages to it. And similarly, if we generate very strong wrong views, like I am sure generating bodhicitta is impossible, cherishing others more than myself, impossible, we can't do it, kind of what in the world was Buddha talking about, saying these kinds of things, then that also inhibits the ripening of our seeds of virtue or destroys them. So those two things, anger and wrong views. When I say anger, I'm not just talking about anger when you explode, okay? There's many forms of anger. So I'm using the word anger to refer to a whole group of negative actions that all, emotions, I should say, that all have the similar characteristics of exaggerating or projecting the negative qualities of someone or something, and then wanting to either strike at it or get away from it. So fight or flight, yeah. And so it can start with irritation, yeah, annoyance, something like that. Those are mild forms of anger. It progresses to frustration, yeah. And then after frustration, kind of general anger, losing our temper. And then we go on to bigger and better things, like revenge, spite, rage, rebelliousness, belligerence, defiance. Okay, you getting the idea? So, yeah, so all of these, when I say the word anger, I'm putting all of them from just, irritation down to total, belligerence or hatred. I'm encompassing all of those by the word anger, okay? So to be really careful about that, because, yeah, it's so easy to get annoyed, isn't it? Yeah, somebody does some little small thing we don't like, and it's like, why are they doing that? Yeah, and then we get annoyed and we're irritated, and it progresses from there. Okay, then the third kind of ethical conduct in the Bodhisattva practice is the ethical conduct of benefiting sentient beings. So as Holiness says, the third type of ethical conduct, helping sentient beings, involves guiding others so they will aspire to and engage in constructive attitudes and actions. Benefiting sentient beings does not mean we fix all their problems. Okay? We cannot fix the world's problems as one individual. Even the Buddha comes, he cannot fix all the problems. So our job is not to go around being Mr. or Ms. Fix-It, sticking our nose into other people's business where it does not belong, okay? And then giving them advice they don't want, guilt-tripping them, whatever we do, or just giving tons of advice that they haven't asked for, and you can tell they are going to disregard. So it's better, again, yeah, to work on ourselves than trying to correct the whole world. Because anyway, how much, I'm not saying don't give good advice. Yeah, we do give good advice at appropriate times to a person who we know will listen, who we have a relationship with, such that, we're confident that they will take it in the right way. Yeah, so it's fine to give advice, especially, if we can see somebody needs it, and especially if they've asked us for help. Yeah, but what we so often do is we are busybodies. Yeah, anybody here a busybody? Yeah, and You know, we give people advice and they don't want to hear it. Yeah? Or we act as people pleasers. Yeah, so benefiting sentient beings does not mean being a people pleaser. Now, what's the difference between being a people pleaser and a kind person? A kind person does things that helps others because they care about other people, want them to be happy and not suffer. A people pleaser does things that look kind, but the motivation is so that other people will like them and praise them. So it's not really because they care about the other person, but they want somebody to like them. Yeah, it's like when you date somebody. Yeah, what do? You're so kind, so sweet. You know, you're trying to sell yourself to somebody. Yeah, because after all, they matched you on the dating app. Yeah, big deal. But maybe this is the one. So, you know, you try and make yourself to be, you do what you think they think you should do. Do you get what I mean? Yeah? So you're not really acting sincerely. You're trying to make yourself into a product that person will buy. Yeah, they're not going to buy you with money. They're going to buy you with flowers and rings and, you know, this kind of stuff. But you're not sincere. Yeah? It's trying to impress people. You know, being helpful doesn't mean that you try and please everybody. He's trying to make all those pastors happy because then they go back to their congregations and tell their congregates to vote for Donnie. Yeah, so it's not a good motivation. So we shouldn't be like that, you know, just to get people to praise us and so on. That doesn't mean we should be mean to them. But what I'm talking about is let's not be a people pleaser who's kind of what I call phony baloney. Mhm. Okay. So there's in this one about the ethical conduct of benefiting sentient beings, they outline 11 groups of people who to pay particular attention to and to benefit when we can. This doesn't mean that we ignore everybody else or that we protest because our group of people isn't among the 11. I think we could all add many other groups of people, but this group was, you know, of 11 is kind of pervasive, I think. You know, it doesn't depend too much on identity politics. Do you have identity politics here? Yeah. Yeah, it's really not pleasant. Okay, so let's go through the 11 groups to, you know, kind of, it brings our attention to these people. So first one is aiding people who are suffering or ill. How do we do this? By helping to care for them. Yeah. So if somebody's injured, help them. Yeah. Somebody's sick, bring them a casserole. That's the famous dish. When you don't know what else to make, you put a bunch of stuff in a pan and you put cheese on top of it, bake it, and you give it. Yeah, that's a casserole. And my friend, when he lost his wife, he said he kept getting so many casseroles he had to put them in the freezer. But he had a lot of friends, which was nice. Yeah, so giving assistance to people who are suffering, who are ill, uh, like that, yeah. So, you know, this one, in one way it's obvious, but in another way, it hits at our fears, because some people, Aunt Gertrude is in the hospital. Yeah, she's sick. She wants visitors, but you don't really like going in the hospital. You feel uneasy in a hospital. You love Aunt Gertrude, but you don't like seeing her sick. It scares you. Okay? So, anybody have that kind of feeling of disquietude about going into hospitals or hospices to see a relative who's dying? For some people, that's difficult. Yeah, because it reminds them of their own mortality, yeah, or their own um, being prone to illness. Yeah, and in our societies in the West, we tend to not want to look at that. We don't want to look at aging, sickness, and death. But aging, sickness, and death are realities of our life and realities of the lives of people we care for and everybody else too. Yeah. And these people need care, but sometimes it's like, I don't want to see somebody when they're all beat up after a car accident or whatever it is. It scares us. So to pay attention to this, and if you find that in yourself and you find it inhibiting your ability to reach out and care for others, then look at it. What exactly are you afraid of? Yeah? And look at the kind of antidotes to those fear. There's a meditation in the Buddha Dharma about impermanence and death. Why? To help us become familiar with these kinds of things so that it ceases to frighten us. Okay, the second group is to guide people who are obscured or ignorant of the means to help themselves. Okay, so an example would be, okay, you have a teenage relative who you can see is behaving in a reckless way. Go and, don't start the conversation off with, don't do this. But, take an interest in them, cultivate a relationship with them. And as you build trust, then, you can give some good advice and good information to this teenager who otherwise may not have it. And I said, particularly a teenager who is not your own child. Why? Because, as many of us know, having been teenagers, whatever our parents say, we don't want to listen to. But it's, and if you're a parent, it's very important. Create opportunities for your kids, even from when they're very little, to become close to other adults that are reasonable, kind people. Because then when they hit teenage years, even you can't talk to them. They don't want to hear from you. The other relative, your family, friend, whoever it is, can talk to them and give them good advice. Yeah, that is something to really think about. Other people who are obscured or ignorant of how to help themselves. People who are just being released from prison. They might have been in prison so long that they don't know how to pump gas, because when they went to prison, the gas station attendant filled everything. They don't know how to do it themselves. They don't know how to use a computer or use a credit card or many things that have changed over the years because they've been imprisoned. Yeah. So reaching out to those people is very important. I do prison work, and I can say that it's really necessary and very helpful, and we learn so much from doing things with inmates. Okay, there's one book that I recommend to you. It's called Tattoos on the Heart. Yeah, and it's written by a Catholic priest who worked in a minority community where crime and poverty were rife. And he just talks about how he makes friends and helps these people. And he, in fact, started a business. It's called Homeboy Industries. Homeboy is the term for, somebody in your neighborhood who you hang out with, sometimes doing naughty things with. But he called it Homeboy Industries. And they have bakeries, they have different shops and things. So it's amazing to hear what he's done. He's brought in people from rival gangs into, these small, businesses that he's created so that the gang members have to work together. Yeah, and it gets these kids out of the gangs. And then so many people ask him to come and speak. He brings these kids with him. And then the kids are like up in front of an audience, and like, people are applauding for them, and they're just like, oh, wow, this has never happened to me before. But they talk about their experience and how much they've changed because of what this Catholic priest has done. Not trying to convert people. He hasn't converted them, but just by helping them learn how to live in the world in a constructive way. Yeah, so check out that book. It's really good. Okay, third group, those who need help to realize their desires. Okay, so people maybe are moving homes. They need help to put all their stuff together in a truck and move it. They may need help planning events. Certainly, something like Maitreya Institute, either here or in the city, they need volunteers. They want to realize their virtuous plans, so they need volunteers. So you go and help. Yeah, and so those kinds of activities to help those who have good wishes or good desires, and you help them to actualize those. Maybe it's a kid who is applying for college or for university, and you help them write their application. You don't write it because that would be dishonest, but you ask the teenagers some questions and teach them how to express themselves so they can write an application and the essay for the application in a way that will hopefully get them admitted to the school they want to go to. Okay, fourth is helping sentient beings who are afraid, in danger, or about to be killed or injured. Okay, so beings who are afraid. Right now in my country, there's a lot of people who are afraid. Okay, many of them are migrants who are not in the country legally, but they have been there for years. They work at jobs, they pay taxes, they don't have the correct immigration papers. But now with Dear Donnie in charge, these people are terrified. Yeah. So, to help them, to give them advice. Yeah. Help them to avoid dear Ellie, Yeah, I give these guys nicknames because you kind of have to, so that I make caricatures out of them. I'm not really talking about them as individuals, but, you know, yeah, teaching, helping these people who are afraid due to the extreme actions of people who are now in power. Yeah. So protecting them. If an animal is about to be killed, then, trying to save it by the animal. Our neighbors down the hill, the previous neighbors, before you came, but you may have known them, they had sheep, and they were going to kill their sheep and put the meat in the freezer and eat it all year. When we heard about it, the idea just was, we didn't want that. So we paid them for the sheep, but then had them taken to a place where they could live happily ever after without somebody threatening their lives. Yeah. Lama Zopa is, he does that a lot. I once walked into a Dharma center in Delhi where there were chickens walking around the Dharma center because they were about to be killed, and Rinpoche bought them and he didn't have a place to put them. So, put them in the Dharma center. Cluck, 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 cluck. Yeah. Or Rinpoche also used to stop whenever there was a roadkill, and he would stop and say prayers over, the dead animal in the road. I like to say prayers to live animals. So we were just in Switzerland, and I was teaching the Dharma to some cows. Yeah, they listen very attentively. Yeah. Yeah. But things like this, where you can reach out, plant good seeds in the minds of other living beings. Yeah. Your pets, especially. Yeah. Show them pictures of the Buddha, chant your mantra out loud, or read prayers out loud. So your cat or dog or pet pig, hears them. It's good for them, puts good seeds in their mind. Occasionally I get pictures of somebody who's following Sravasti Abbey Dharma talks online, and they'll send me a picture of their dog looking at the screen, with somebody giving a Dharma talk. And yeah, that's good. That's good for them. So beings who are afraid, in danger, or about to be killed. Sometimes we can see disputes in public, and some people have the skill to kind of, what do you call it? Kind of intervening to stop a dispute. I talked to one woman, she was quite a character, and she told me of some times when she did that, when somebody, in a park was having an argument with somebody else, and she would go up and just act like a crazy person. So much so that everybody was shocked and they stopped and, like, what's this lady doing? But it stopped the dispute. Yeah. So to do what we can to intervene there. Yeah. Okay. Number 5 is aiding people who are grieving the death of somebody, or grieving the loss of their social position. The stock market goes down and they're grieving, the loss of their money. So to console people like that. How do you console people? I don't think it's a thing of saying, oh, don't worry, because they are worried. But to say something like, stay in the present moment. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. So don't let your mind run wild with crazy ideas about the future. Stay in, now, do what you can, live a good life, and don't worry about what's happening to the stock market, or your retirement fund or whatever it is that people worry a lot about, especially in economic times that are like yo-yos. People who are grieving the death of someone. You know what I think grief is? We think that we're grieving the past because the past is here no longer. That person that was so instrumental or valuable in our life is no longer here. But when you really think about it, I think we're grieving a future that will not happen. Yeah, because we've been anticipating that this person will be in our lives in the future, but now they've passed away, so our future is going to look different. So it's interesting to grieve something that hasn't happened. Isn't that strange when you think about it? Why do we grieve something that hasn't happened? It's because we've made some kind of fantasy view about how we wanted the future to look. And, life happens, as they say, and the future is going to look different. And then we go, but, I think it's more helpful, and this is what I do when people who are grieving contact me, is I say, because this is what I do, is I'm very happy that that person was in my life for as long as they were in my life. I'm very happy that I knew that person, that I rejoice in our connection and, the virtue and good emotions that we shared. And then I send them on to their next life with love. Yeah. So and that I find really settles the mind, to rejoice at what we had, send them on with love. Yeah, instead of just kind of feeling lost and like the whole world around us has collapsed because somebody we care about has died. Yeah, the world hasn't collapsed. The world goes on. We will go on. Yeah, it often means creating a new identity for ourselves, because maybe we were so identified as being this person's partner, and now that person isn't there. Or we were identified as being somebody's parent or somebody's child, and that person has died, So we need to think of ourselves in a different way in the future. But we can certainly do that. Yeah. And create a happy future for ourselves. Okay, so aiding people who are grieving. And then number 6 is helping the poor and needy. And we do that by giving material aid, as well as giving them respect, and in an appropriate manner, guiding them and letting them know about their good qualities. Because sometimes people who are poor and needy, they feel like the world is against them. They can never get themselves out of poverty, and they have a hopeless attitude. But so there, it's really important to show them that they are valuable members of society, and the amount of wealth you have does not have anything to do with your value as a living being. Yeah, and this is, our society as a whole thinks that if you're rich, you are more valuable. I don't necessarily think so. Rich people can do a lot of damage in this world, and that damage is not very valuable. Yeah? But everybody's life is worthwhile living. And if we can nurture people who are poor and oppressed, you'd be surprised at the talents and abilities that can be brought out in them so that they really can do beautiful things in their lives. Yeah, and I say this from the prison work that I do. Yeah, there's one man in particular. He committed a double murder. Yeah, he's in prison for life. So the kind of person that most people want to lock him up and throw away the key. There was a university program offered in his prison. He jumped at it. So he has graduated from a 4-year college, and he's become what's called a field minister. So he is now stationed in other prisons, and he counsels prisoners. And he runs the Buddhist group in the prison where he now is. Yeah. So he came from a horribly abusive environment growing up, a very poor family, but his life has just turned around in an extraordinary way. Yeah. He even wrote a children's book, which Sravasti Abbey published. It's called Gavin Learns the Cause of Happiness, something like that. See if you could check it up. Al Ramos. Yeah, you can get it on Amazon, and it has beautiful pictures to it. Yeah, so he wrote the book, and we had it self-published, and it's a really nice book for kids. Yeah, can you find it?
Gavin discovers the secret to happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you showing the cover?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the cover is very nice. So it's about 2 dogs. Yeah, or actually more than 2 dogs. And one dog is jealous of another dog because he has more toys, things like that. But and then another dog is sick. And yeah, so it tells a story about dogs that's about human beings. So very nice for kids. It has a good moral to it. Okay, so helping the poor and needy. Now, I have to add here, because I just got an email from somebody who has a teenage son, or I guess her son is maybe about 20 now. And one of his friends, who's been friends with for a few years, has started gambling and has lost money in gambling. And that other boy has come to their family and asked for loans of money. And my friend, with the attitude of wanting to encourage that boy, gave him money. Now, what do you think happens when you give a gambler money? Are they going to pay off their debts? No way. They're going to go and gamble that money, which is what that boy did. Okay. So, he was in need of money. And I said to my friend very strongly, it is not helping him. It is not encouraging him to give him money when you know he's going to gamble it away. If you want to help him, get him into treatment for gambling addiction. And the same thing goes for if you have friends or relatives who have substance abuse problems. They're alcoholics. They're taking too much marijuana, even though it's legal, but you can see it's making a mess in their lives. Then the way to help them isn't by giving them money to enable them to continue doing that, but to get them into rehab. Okay. Then number 7 is offering assistance to those who need a place to stay. Yeah, such as the poor, Dharma practitioners, travelers, stray animals, monastics. In ancient times, the monastics lived outdoors mostly, yeah, but sometimes they needed places to stay when it was raining or whatever. So, and helping travelers, it doesn't mean that you have to invite strangers into your home. That is not necessarily wise. But if somebody asks you for directions, there's different ways of giving directions. If you ask somebody in India how to get somewhere, that person will tell you, go here, go there, go this way, go this way, even if they don't know where to go. Yeah, they will not say, I don't know. They will give you some directions. I advise against doing that. That's not particularly helpful. Okay, but and people in America just say, okay, go to the light, turn left, go down 3 streets, turn right, then go to the roundabout, and the second roundabout, go left, and then you trace backwards, and when you see the grocery store, make a right. And they've told you so much stuff you cannot remember it. Okay, yeah, that's not so helpful. Some places in the world, when you ask directions, the person, if they have time, will walk you or take you to where you're going. Yeah. And if you're a stranger in a strange land, that's really nice. If you've ever been a traveler and need help, people who are kind and give you good directions, you really appreciate it. Yeah. Okay. And also stray animals. Yeah, they need a place to stay. They're poor and needy. Take them in. That's basically how we got our cats, because, okay, one cat showed up at the doorstep. Another cat, we went to a facility, like what do you call it? Like the shelter for stray animals. And we wanted a kitten, but there was one kind of somebody who was a little bit bigger than a kitten who just meowed and meowed, and she wanted to come home with us. We took her home. Then, so that was Maitreya. Our cats are named after the 4 immeasurables. So that's how we got Maitreya, which means love. Karuna we got because her mom was a stray and was found by somebody else. And when that Mama Kitty had her kittens, that was one of them. And so our friend brought her over, and that one became Karuna, or compassion. Then Mudita, she was the one who her name means joy. She showed up at our front door, and we took her in. And then the last one was Upekkha, and which means equanimity. And I found him under a tree in the snow and brought him home. Yeah. So stray animals can be really wonderful pets. Yeah. And I encourage you to take them in. Okay, then number 8 is benefiting people who want to be in harmony. Yeah, so we always meet people who are not in harmony. They want to be in harmony. Help them out, maybe it's you know both people kind of well, and you can get them to talk to each other while you're sitting there. Sometimes having a third person just be present when people are trying to settle a dispute is very helpful, because they are more mindful of their language and their voice and everything. Sorry, I have the hiccups. Okay, so helping people who want to be in harmony. Sometimes we can teach them good communication skills. Some of you may have heard about a program called Nonviolent Communication. It's really good. I highly recommend it, and that can help people learn good communication skills. So these kinds of things are good. Sometimes we have to refer people to therapy and have a person who's a therapist act as the mediator to help people communicate. Okay, number 9 is to assist those who want to follow the path. So people are interested in practicing the Dharma, they want to learn about it. So give them books, there's a lot of free distribution books available, or you buy them a good intro book. Take them with you to a Dharma center, or recommend things online by different teachers, and they can listen to those teachings and then decide, if they have a connection with that person, and then maybe go to the center. Encourage your friends who practice the Dharma. Yeah, invite them to come with you to special events, to retreats or pujas or whatever. Do interfaith dialogue. Yeah, that's very important now in our world. Yeah. Okay, then 10 is help sentient beings who are acting negatively or about to do so. So depending on the situation, we may, stop somebody and, say, let me try and help you instead of you doing X, Y, Z, intervening, sometimes maybe even with a stranger. What I try and do if I'm in a supermarket, and you often see a parent with a child in the supermarket, and the child is crying, yeah, and mom or dad is trying to buy the groceries for the whole family. So sometimes it's fun. Go up and do something fun with the child to distract them. Yeah. And it gives mom or dad a little bit of peace. Okay. So, yeah, so people who want to follow the path, give them the tools, give them references, take them with you. It's always very helpful. Yeah. Or no, that was number 9. The number 10 was people who are acting negatively, so that's what I said about entertaining the children. Yeah. Not that the children are acting negatively, but if they don't stop carrying on, chances are mom or dad's going to act negatively. Okay, and then the 11th one is those who can only be helped by a demonstration of supernormal powers, then you should use your supernormal powers. So we have one of the Bodhisattva precepts is not using your supernormal powers when there's a need to. So that's one precept I keep because I don't have any supernormal powers, so I cannot use them. That choice doesn't happen to me. But there is that thing in there. Okay, so those are the third group, how the ethical conduct of benefiting sentient beings. Okay, so there's a lot more to ethical conduct, but I think that's a good start. And we're a few minutes over time, but we can have a few questions. Yeah, if you have. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the teachings. I have a question regarding euthanasia, whether this can be considered ethical.
Basically, no. Yeah, it's killing. It's killing. Yeah. And whether it's a pet or a human being, it's considered killing, even if the person asks you to help them die. Yeah. Let me just add one more sentence to this. You know, people want to do that because they feel like their life is not worth anything. They're in pain or they can't do what they used to do. So they feel like my life is not valuable. Their life is valuable. Yeah. You can still, if you're a Dharma practitioner, you can still listen to teachings. Yeah. You can still read. You can still listen to recordings of mantras. There's still a lot you can do to make your life meaningful. So, you know, we should encourage people to do that. Okay, you can't do what you used to do before, but you still can contribute to the benefit of society, or at least the benefit of the people who are around you then and there.
So I really like how not stealing is instead written as not taking what's not freely given, because that's really helped me in practice. It makes it very clear what to do and what not to do. Lying or deceiving is more difficult, and that's what my question is. So practically speaking, you are in situations, especially like, I can give an example. For example, very bureaucratic countries, for example, where the easiest way to achieve a goal, a good goal, is not necessarily lying, but leaving out things, for example.
But doing what?
Leaving out things, omitting things. You know, I can make up many examples, but you're trying to visit somebody in hospital and they only allow family, and they say, are you family? You nod your head or something. So with stealing, it's very easy to see by following, not taking what's not really given. With lying, I struggle. How do you separate?
Yeah, lying is much more difficult, yeah, because you want to do something, and if you fudge the truth, yeah. But the thing about lying is it eventually catches up. Like the example, you know, your friends in the hospital, and they ask you, are you next of kin? And you say yes, and that's not true. Well, eventually the hospital is going to find out. Yeah. And that's not going to help your friend, and it's not going to help you either. Yeah. So sometimes lying, you know, can be effective right now, but it's not good in the long run. So somebody always says, okay, somebody comes up to you, like at the Abbey, we have deer who live around us, yeah? And somebody comes and says, I want to hunt deer. I just saw one go. Which way did they go? You don't say, oh yeah, they just jumped over. They went that way on that path. You can go get them and kill them, go that way. No, of course not. You know, you don't say that, okay? But you know, because your interest more is in preserving the life and preventing the other person from creating the negative karma of killing. So you can stand there and go, you know, you waste time, you change the topic, you don't say, yeah, you know, but you do something creative to not give them the information because you know that they're going to harm another living being through it.
Why don't you just say, I don't want to give you that information?
Yeah, you could sure say that. Yeah, you can certainly say, you know, I don't believe in hunting animals and I'm not going to tell you. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, but if I can push on it a little bit more. But so, like what he said, that would be considered lying, pointing in the other direction, and is that then losing virtue? Because if you point in the other direction and
Yeah.
you send the hunter in the other direction,
Yeah.
that would be lying.
Yeah.
But is that ethical conduct because it's in the service of saving a life?
I said what I said, and you can figure things out from there, okay? Yes, yes. In Singapore, people often get these ants in their homes. A number of times I'm saying, but we have to kill the ants, otherwise the ants are going to eat our whole house. Yeah, so isn't it okay to kill the ants? As if I'm some Catholic priest who's going to give them absolution. Oh, yes, my child, go ahead, kill as many ants as you want. I'm not going to say that. That's what they want me to say. I'm not going to say that, you know. So I usually tell them what we do at the Abbey is there are a number of ways of getting ants to not want to habitate your house. But they always come back with, yes, but I don't have time to do those. And yes, but they're flooding my house right now. You know? And then I just say, what can I say? You know? I've said something, and then you think on your own, but don't ask me for absolution.
How far does that go? I mean, we routinely clean our kitchen sink with chlorine, killing millions of microbes.
Yeah, we're not really sure if microbes are sentient beings or not.
If I may change the subject.
Oh, please.
So the question really, back to something you mentioned this morning. You explained the example when you move from thinking you should practice and when you really wanted to. And I was remember always your example. We often shoot ourselves in the foot, which really stuck with me. I was wondering, since asking for a friend, whether you have some suggestion or how to strengthen the wanting, cultivating that more, since I've not had yet this strong moment.
Meditate on karma and its effects. Meditate on impermanence and death. Yeah, those are two good meditations to get us going.